Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Jamie and I teach everything about faith, healing, and neuroscience. This video is going to be a shorter video on my testimony because I feel like my testimony was very long and I've just been having this desire to remake it and just private it for a long time, and I am feeling called to make it a lot shorter and simpler, just more compacted for you guys. If you guys are planning on staying for the entire testimony, go ahead and grab your snacks because it's going to be a little bit of a ride. Let's jump right into it. My mom was more of a Catholic. She was raised in DR and she has more of a Catholic background, and so does my dad as well, but he is more like esoteric conspiracy theorist kind of guy. He's not very religious, and my mom instilled the religious, perspective and doctrine in me at a very young age. And so in this video, I want to really make it clear on who I believe God's character is now after coming out of New Age spirituality, after coming out of the idea that God is only love and light and he is in every single molecule of existence, which he is, after coming out of the idea that we essentially have the power to manifest and manipulate reality. And so I want to touch on these things without straying too far away from my testimony, and I want to touch on who I believe God is right now as somebody who has been saved by Jesus. And so what I mostly want to touch on starting in the beginning of this testimony is that I had no idea who God actually was. I only had the idea of who God was based off who people have told me he was and those conversations they would have, and a lot of shaming and condemnation surrounded me during childhood, which made it very difficult for me to feel connected to God or truly follow him from a perspective of love and curiosity, as opposed to from a perspective of condemnation and fear and submission and control, right? Which was basically the idea that has been embedded in me from a very young age, because based off how my mom would explain who God was very contradictory in terms of he loves us so much, but if you don't follow him, he's going to be very, very angry at you and he's going to condemn you. And it will show up in a lot of the stories that they would talk about in the ways that God would behave in the Old Testament, which would basically be a lot different after Jesus's coming. And so I had no idea at that time, my entire childhood up until I completely just fell away from just the Catholic and the Bible Christian perspective of Jesus and fell into New Age in 2021, I believe. I was mostly enticed and invited and attracted to New Age because I was told that I could manifest my reality and change it and shape it and shift it and control it, and that is ultimately what led me into this spiral of needing to change every aspect of myself, needing to become more self-aware and do all these other practices and modalities to level up and become more enlightened. And I'm here to tell you that I didn't leave New Age because I was unhappy or because I hated it or was forced out of it or was confused in any way. I was deep in New Age. I was excited. I loved doing self-development work. And the thing is, it was intertwined with spirituality, right? And I felt like I was on the right path because this is a God of love and light. We're not promoting condemnation or shaming, and we're actually learning about the universal forces and the laws, and now we're feeling like we're even closer to God than we ever were. And this is why it's a very difficult topic for a lot of New Agers to grasp, because it's not like we were in New Age and we suffered, like whatever witchcraft or just the feelings of being separated from God, which is what we would have assumed we would feel if we stray away from biblical God, right? From God, Jesus. But even in the Bible, it tells you that the devil is going to entice you with things that feel good, with things of this earth, right? With material things, with relationships, with things that don't actually fulfill your heart, which is going to be different for many of us in terms of our life path, right? But ultimately, what will fulfill that God-sized hole in your heart is Jesus. I feel like I can say this now, coming out of New Age and literally just being a baby on my walk. I can already feel the changes energetically, emotionally, in my heart, my desires slowly shifting and changing, all because I'm reading the Bible and I'm learning of God's character and how consistent he was. And once you get to know who God is intimately, I am telling you guys, this is very similar to identity work, to inner child work, because in that modality, we are constantly being told you have to imagine and envision a healthy childhood, or that mother and father or best friend or relationship or circumstance you always wanted, right? But that is all you conjuring it up by your own hand, by your own works, right? It's not you actually tapping into Jesus, a real energetic, loving being who is alive, who you can tap into, who we know very well what it's like to channel and tap into different energy rooms and all these, like tarot or astrology, tapping into the different planets. Like, we know about these things now. And so coming out of that and knowing now that tapping into Jesus is actually more than just, tapping into a planet of that's going to impact this one season in your life. You're giving that planet all these things, the design, human design, Reiki, you're giving it way too much power over your life when God is the one who can actually completely change that. It's kind of like we're coming out of a box only to fit into another one. And so that was just the biggest deception ever, is to think that you're outside of a label, outside of a box, but really you're just fitting into a whole other cult. I said it. We're starting in strong here. This is a different kind of testimony than my first one. Okay, so right, I was born into, this feeling like I had to be a certain way or I'm going to be disowned. And a lot of the things that I can see now in my childhood that the enemy has distorted, we say the enemy, which means Satan and, Lucifer, or any kind of negative thought form, which we speak a lot about in New Age. And so those negative thought forms would be Satan, right? Would be not from God. It would be that, Satan distorting what God has created and meant for love and meant for, just passion and fulfillment. If I would ever get upset towards my mom because she had this perception of having to obey and be obedient, otherwise you're going to be rejected and thrown into hell, she would hit me with words and sentences of you don't behave this way, or if you're behaving this way and feeling this way, God doesn't like that. He doesn't like his children this way. He doesn't like it when you do this. He doesn't like it when you do that. So early on, I was programmed to hide my feelings, to be ashamed of them. And I was programmed into thinking that I was an ungrateful daughter because I'm having all these feelings. And that ultimately led to suicidal thoughts from a very young age. I fell into deep depression. And I've never identified with that though, which is something that's completely different, because if anyone would have diagnosed me, I would have been diagnosed with depression, because I've never felt happy in my childhood. I was in that consistent state for years. It wasn't momentarily, and that's honestly what clinical depression by definition is. And how I got out of it, I never identified with it. I would hit myself in the bathroom. I would be so angry at myself, at God. I would yell at him. I was so confused. And it wasn't until I left my mom's house and moved in with my dad, and I was able to see that there's a much bigger world out there than this limited way of living, this limited perception that I had of myself, that I had of reality. I was able to see that people are living differently, behaving differently, acting differently, and still being okay with these parts of themselves. I was able to see that by example. And so that is ultimately what led me out of a lot of these, stagnant ways of thinking. But during a young age, I was actually very in tune with the spiritual realm, in terms of I was overcome with a lot of fear. And I was able to see these apparitions at night, and I've experienced like sleep paralysis and all these nightmares. It was just consistent nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. And so I was not, like estranged from seeing things that weren't like normal, but I'm not very advanced or like one of those people that can see very clearly who it is and who can hear very clearly what it is. I was mostly able to see those apparitions just randomly, right? After getting into New Age, I realized that's what I've been seeing. It happened over a year ago where I started to see that what I've been observing is orbs, and I've never had a name for it. And as soon as this girl on YouTube, this famous guru that I was watching, that I looked up to, she said the word orb, something rather clicked in my head. And so after that, those orbs became more and more apparent. It was like white shaped orbs, and you would actually honestly see them a lot in my videos, and that's exactly what they look like. It will look like, if you ever see one of those white things that just fly by, that's what they look like in the daytime, and then in the nighttime it looks exactly like that, but times 1,000. Like if you turned your flash on and you just have it waving. And so I started to see that those orbs were manifesting and becoming a lot more brighter and stronger. And of course the fear came like through me, right? Because I had all this bad programming on demons. I was just very much knowledgeable on what I should not do, and what would happen if I do the wrong things, and how that would lead me away from God, as opposed to what I can do to lead me closer to God in a way that is not fully led and shaped by a lens of condemnation and shame. And so as I've fallen into New Age, I was so happy and excited to find out that I am safe in the afterlife, that I'm not going to hell, that I was taught that I was ungrateful, but really my emotions needed an outlet, right? Really, I shouldn't have been shamed for how I felt or had felt. I shouldn't have felt guilty for these feelings that are very, very human. And so I thought that I was going into the right path, because New Age promotes a lot of healing and working on yourself. And that's not to say that it's a bad thing, but that is to show that a lot of the healing done only by your own hand, only by your own works, and keep continuously doing that, is kind of like you straying away from God and just doing another thing that will add more burden and stress into your life. If you're continuously looking to fix something about yourself, to change something about yourself, when God has literally done the work for you on the cross, he tells you, seek me instead of doing all these superficial affirmations that are actually dead works. And this is one of the revelations I had lately, which is those healing modalities that we're constantly trying to visualize and manifest and change within our, emotional state, or within our mind's eye, in order to have a different outcome manifest physically, is dead works, because you're doing it by your own hand, and you're not the most powerful being ever. And that's the most humbling thing coming out of New Age, is that God is the one who has the power beyond all labels, beyond horoscope, beyond the season of your life, beyond things that you thought were not possible. New Age promotes this God that is the universe, that he is impersonal, doesn't necessarily seek to know you. He's not a relational God. He's more of just a God that is creator and exists in everything. And we know that we are an extension of God, and we can actually manipulate and change reality. And manifestation is demonic. It becomes something that feeds this ideology of having to do everything yourself, of you controlling reality. And I'm seeing so many spiritual gurus that I looked up to are now acknowledging that. They're acknowledging that changing your reality by your own hand is just feeding the ego, is feeding this need to control, whether indirectly, subconsciously. Every time you find yourself going into this emotional spiral, where are you having to release this emotional burden? Like, are you using that in order to like channel more in your tarot readings, or trying to figure out why based off the signs of the universe, based off the color of that person's card, to see if they're coming back based off your dreams? Like, this is honestly psychosis, and not even just spiritual psychosis. It's more of just feeding the loop in your brain that causes fear and stagnancy. And Jesus and God is telling you, Jesus is God, is telling you, just look at me, look towards me, and I will lead you, right? I am the truth, the way, and the life. And building a relationship with God and touching into him intimately is ultimately what is going to change your heart. And that is who the Bible preaches. As now that I've gotten out of New Age, I can see where I was having a lot of distorted perceptions and beliefs around who God was. And I literally thought that God was somebody who just wanted to control us and wants everybody to be submissive to him. And if you're not, you're going to hell out of punishment. Like, he is literally telling you that I am so holy. You literally, like, just by law, you can't approach me with all these sins and think that you'll be okay in proximity, because I'm so holy that I would just purify you. And if you by existence is sin, then that's not gonna happen. Like, it's just not gonna work. And if you're consciously choosing to live a life away from God into sin, then you're choosing a life that is separate from him. And that's what the life looks like. It's not that he's telling you, come to me, otherwise this is the punishment. It's like, no, this is what happens when you don't come to me. And you see that very clearly in the beginning of Genesis, when God has the tree of good and evil. Eve ate the apple, right? And that's where you see that we are met with knowledge. And a lot of people in New Age think this is secret knowledge. It's honestly knowledge you don't need to know. You don't need the burden of, you don't need that in order to have a happy, successful life. Genuinely, God put that tree in the garden to prepare us, because in order to protect your kids, you don't just keep them homeschooled forever and sheltered away from the world. You teach them, you give them understanding, and you let them know the consequences of their actions, even what would happen before they take that action, right? That right there is protection, right? Protection without preparation is denial. And otherwise, that wouldn't make God the best father, right? And God gave us free will, but honestly, that was genuine preparation and protection in a way that it's not going to keep you sheltered and so curious, like a child that was homeschooled all his life, and then he goes to college and now he goes off on a bender. Like, that can't be us, right? Like, we have to know what we're getting ourselves into consciously, and we choose that. And when we choose what we don't want, we're gonna end up having to live with the consequences of our actions. And the devil is so good at this, because he makes you think that what you don't want is what you want. And so I had this distorted idea that God just wouldn't accept us and love us because we're living in sin. And yet the Bible repeatedly tells us that, and shows us that God's character is consistent and loving because of all the times he has given us grace and mercy. And when we're literally at our worst moments, he will still come and save us. He will literally take us out of the gutter, and he will use your story. Like, you are even more powerful and influential because people resonate and relate to your story. And so even if you want to live a life separate from God, he will redeem that and use that for his glory. He will literally use your story because somebody resonates with you and sees themselves in your shoes. And that is how I started to read the Bible. When I started to read the Bible from this perspective, from the perspective of, if I was that person, because I feel like I was once a slave to this environment, to this relationship, to this label, to this circumstance, how would God act and behave in that season of my life? And so I learned that God does not work on our immediate emotional timeline, right? He gave us the tools in order to self-regulate. He told us to literally hold our thoughts captive and give it to Christ, right? And so when I started to do that, I realized, okay, this transformation is legit. It feels energetically different and way more moving and transformative than anything in New Age, because New Age is you doing it by your own hands, superficial affirmations, words that aren't alive. And God is saying the Bible is alive because those words are literally real, coming from him, coming from truth. And Jesus says he is truth. Jesus says he is the word. And so we know all about channeling and connecting towards things and, nature and all these gods and whatever in New Age. But if Jesus is telling you, hey, my words are real, what does that say about the identity shifting and mindset shifting works that you have been trying to do by your own works, by your own hands? Of course, I'm not saying to reject it and dismiss it, but it's like there's a deeper, more healing work that you can do when you come to Christ, which is reminding yourself of who you are in Christ, your identity in him. And that will look completely different from anything you thought you were or anything you tried to believe about your worth and your value, because your worth and your value don't actually revolve around your accomplishments and how you look or where you're living or any of these things, right? God redeems everything for his glory. And one of the things that made me anchor into following Christ was after I became aware of seeing these spirits. At one point I got really, really afraid. And so I saw 3 shadow beings, like really dark shadow beings. Like as I'm recording in this angle, I saw them like kind of stalk up like on my ceiling, and I would see them in a humanoid shape. And from New Age, I would know that, if you have negative thoughts and feelings, that it would manifest or it would attract, right? But biblically, it's telling you like, no, those negative thoughts and feelings aren't even you. Like, I felt after that a wave of anger and just sadness, and everything was just pissing me off. And I just started to argue with my mom for no reason. And so I was able to question and like zoom out. I was like, this doesn't feel like me, because I don't think I would actually ever do this. And I don't know why this is upsetting me so much. It's like not even something to be upset about, right? Because it was just such a weird, like subtle but almost instantaneous difference that just happened after seeing those 3 dark shadow beings. And as I'm watching them, those white orbs, they just start throwing that like little golf ball looking white, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just like the white orbs were just throwing more white orbs into my face, right? Like if you just had a bubble gun and you just kept it in my face, like it's kind of like, hey, like look at what's in your room. And so obviously me being a New Age, I'm thinking, hey, that's spirit guides. Then I go into the spirit guide hole, find out they're not even biblical or angelic, and they may take the form of something angelic and light. And even though the Bible says that Lucifer, literally named Luz, which is light in Spanish, is going to dress himself in a form of an angel, in the form of a light, and it's going to be deceptive. And that's literally the biggest thing that they're promoting in New Age, which is love and light. And yet I'm here to tell you that love and light doesn't actually heal everything. And we know, based off positive positive toxic positivity. Whoa. That it doesn't actually heal you. What heals you is transformation from the heart, right? Is choosing to behave differently, right, with intention. And then once you go out in the real world, it's delaying your responses from the emotion, starting from the emotion leading to behavior, right? And so God repeatedly shows us that he knows the brain and how the brain works more than we do, because he targets our heart. And God tells us that you don't have to come clean, you don't have to come perfect, you don't have to come straight, you don't have to come correct, you just have to come to me and let everything fall away. And that is how you become surrendered gradually over time. You become changed gradually over time. The more that you consistently seek me intimately, more than just reading the Bible or just living a life that is just quote unquote good, performative, right? Like Jesus came down to confront the people at church because they're performing perfectionism, but their heart is not actually with God. They don't know God intimately, right? How do you seek a relationship with God and all you're doing is just performing for these people and not sinning? But you're not inviting him into the darkest, hardest seasons of your life. You're not praying to him when you are just grateful and having ordinary days. You're only coming when you're scared and afraid. Like, obviously this is honestly just spread awareness to some people, but this is a different kind of relationship, one where you know him even just on your most ordinary days, so he can literally just sit by you, so you can feel like you have a friend, like you have somebody who is there, who you know intimately, right? And so after I saw those demonic forces, basically they ended up leaving, and I just fell into a hole of spirit guides. And as soon as I saw that the very person who got me into New Age, who was promoting spirit guides and tarot reading and the Reiki and shadow work and all these things, has given their life to Christ. And I'm here to tell you that she was not even the first. She was like the fourth or the third person of the very small limited group of people that I follow that gave their life to Christ and left New Age behind. And she was the one who really touched my heart, because I'm like, wait, you're seeing spirits, you're talking to them, communing with them. How are you now following Christ? And I'm like, let me just watch it, but I'm not going to be influenced, because I feel like I know the spirit realm and I know all these things, and it doesn't make sense otherwise. Like maybe you just went back because you were afraid, right? And so she ends up talking about how the spirit guides are demonic and are the very things that have been leading her into the most successful business, right? Into more friendships, into, across the world and having these brand new adventures, all of these things that they're promoting online, right? Like you crave adventure, you crave living in a cabin in the woods and baking at night like witches, right? And it's like they're promoting that, and yet it's still a life away from Christ. And so she found out firsthand that those spirit guides ended up morphing and shifting into something that was not love or light. It was straight up demons on the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus. When she said that, they transformed. And so obviously she ends up going on about how crystals are demonic and how they're just a portal. They're kind of like an alarm in the astral realm, kind of just pointing like, hey, I'm here, like come here, right? And so she ends up also talking about how tarot opens up so many doorways for her. And I was like, I don't wanna let go of New Age, because New Age has been so helpful for me, and that would have been a huge identity shed. Like, what am I gonna do now? I felt so lost. So I felt like I don't want to let it go, but I'm going to collect all my crystals and put it in a box. So I put all my crystals in a box and I put it on this side of the window, and when I put it on the side of the window, I started to feel already, before I was even like going to fall asleep, that I was going to get attacked that night. Like just a wave of something that didn't feel like it was my emotion, similar to when those 3 demons came into my room, just overcame my emotional state. And so I didn't feel like I had full true confirmation of, is this really demonic? Even though I know that's what I've been hearing my whole life from my mom, from anybody who's Christian or Catholic, that tarot is demonic. I put all my crystals in a box and I go to sleep, and all of a sudden I feel like, it's what I would say, I'm astral projected out of my body, and there's a huge demon that comes out of this crystal box. And so I start to pray the one prayer that I know from the Bible, and it's the, I don't know how you say it in English, but it's the one that tells you, like, give us this day our daily bread. And I only know how to pray it in Spanish because that's the prayer my mom taught me, and I know it like the back of my the back of my hand. And for some reason, all these years, I would keep forgetting. Every single time over the years, I would have random dreams of me being attacked by demons and me having to cast it out with that prayer, and then for some reason I would always forget them. But that night, that demon came out, and I remembered the prayer, and I was just attacked. Like, we were just beating each other up in this very room. We were beating each other up, and I just said, I am not waking up until you get out of my room. And so I prayed, and soon after that, it just left. And I knew then, like, oh, this is confirmation that I was not following the right path, and I have to put everything in a box and throw it away. So of course I did that, and I just felt a huge relief from my shoulders, and that was very surprising as somebody who really enjoyed New Age and working on themselves. And over time, I had a couple dreams where I realized that I saw one of my family members who passed away in heaven. And then I ended up seeing and having my first vision of Jesus. As I'm falling asleep, I see his face just comes to me so clearly, but it was like parts of his face and not the entirety of his face. Like, I would only see one part of his face, and then like this other part, or like maybe like his body, like if it were stickers on an Instagram story. And I actually drew. I have it right here, so ignore the bottom, but this is basically what I saw. I saw the top part of his face, and starting from the nose up, like kind of like this. And I was taken aback because I'm like, did I really see that? And so literally a few weeks ago, this girl, she posted a video, and she says that she's like, I don't know why, but Jesus doesn't want to show me all of his face, but I would see parts of his face, and like, you know, like if it was stitched into one, you know, frame. And she explained it and described it the exact way I saw it in my dream, and that felt like even more confirmation, like, no, like Jesus is real, like I just saw him. And then I had a dream that God came to me, and I've actually posted this in my video, probably in my shorts here on YouTube, but God came to me in a form of light, and I was basically sitting in like this old church looking, castle looking room, with a huge room with a long table, and on top of this table was an opening, a glass opening, or like a window of some kind, right? And it was the size of the table, so in terms of like length, right, it was huge. And so I'm sitting there, and there's a bunch of other people sitting in this table with me, and my sister was there. And out of nowhere, they're talking, right? They're just talking about whatever they're talking about. And out of nowhere, I interrupt them, and I'm like, do you guys think God is funny? And they just looked at each other like, like they couldn't answer my question. And as I'm just like staring at them after I asked the question, out of nowhere I see the sun, it just starts beaming so brightly at me in that one little corner. It was beaming and shining so brightly, and I was like, I looked up and I'm like, like, that's God. Like I was overwhelmed or overcame with so much love and peace in a way that I could have never conceptualized or even conjure up in my own heart chakra, right? I can't conjure. I like, we have no idea. We like, the love that we feel is a fraction of a love that he feels for us, because we can actually only love to the extent that we allow ourselves, to the extent that we feel safe enough, right? That's the human condition. That's the human body. That's what our nervous system allows. And he operates outside of that. So he loves us more than we can ever conceptualize. And I felt that like so deeply, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's him. And I don't know why I'm getting so emotional right now. But I felt so much love, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is God. And so I made this video and I posted it, and then some lady on Facebook, she's like, she gives me a scripture, and mind you, I still haven't even completed the Bible. Like I've only read like a few of the beginning stories of the Bible. And she says that this is basically in the book, in the Bible, chapter Numbers 6:24 to 26 or something like that. And one of the verses, let me see if I could actually look it up, but I'm probably honestly gonna take forever before I even finish this video. But she ends up telling me that the verse reminds her of exactly what my dream basically says. And because of that, it felt like triple confirmation for me, and I was just ecstatic, because you know, when you're somebody that can see into the spirit realm, or you have all these dreams, or you're just on this journey on your own, it feels very hard to continue when you don't have validation and somebody there with you to validate that. And it can feel like, am I really leaving New Age and just replacing it with something else? And I'm here to let you know, guys, like I felt that way too. Like I by no means think that you should jump into anything without fully doing your research. And God literally says, like Jesus says, like just look at the fruits of the people. And there's so many people that know Jesus and they shine this kind of kindness and peace and love in their face, and there's other people who only know the religious spirit, who only know religion, who don't actually show the fruits of love, of peace, of generosity, of forgiveness, because those are just different kinds of people, right? Like anybody can say they follow Jesus, but not everybody does. Anybody can say they work on themselves and they're New Age, but a lot of people are depressed and still suicidal and still promoting more healing, right? And so where and when does it ever end? It ends with Jesus. Like there is an end to the spiral that they keep promoting. And so here, guys, I found the verse. So the verse 6:24, the Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. So he made his face shine, like illuminate. Like there's just different translations for it, but the word shine, like why would you make your face shine, right? Like that doesn't make sense in the English language. But in this case, they're talking about his face like literally shining and is upon thee, right? Upon you. And that is exactly what I dreamt before I even reached that chapter. It's called Numbers. I haven't even opened it, touched it, nothing. I know nothing about it. And so having that to me is just even more confirmation. I haven't really spoken about this story, but I guess I'll give it a short go since we're already 40. And that made me realize that God has always been here and made me question my belief in New Age is the time when my mom didn't have a job for over a year, right? So this was like around COVID, and we were collecting like unemployment, and she wanted to get a job that would give her so much free time. One that she just, I enjoyed and was close by. So she has like all these specific things, and more importantly, she wanted to work in the hospital. And you guys know that is like, living in New York, there's kind of like a bit more of qualifications. Like the barest minimum would be having to speak English, and my mom doesn't speak English, and she knows a little bit, but like she doesn't really speak English. And so I have been applying for jobs, and this very much reflects a lot of what I've been talking about, which is doing everything by your own hand, by your own works. And I am just tying this together, like connecting this as I'm going along. But God is literally telling you, like, rely on me, like seek me, like I will help you, I will provide. Just know how to hear my voice, recognize it. How are you going to do that? By finding out who his character is, right? So I was like applying, I kept researching jobs, things that she would enjoy, even just at one point, just because I'm desperate, just applying to random jobs, and I was getting rejected for all of them, for her, on her behalf, right? And she was just leaning on me to do everything, and I just could not, and I was just getting so stressed out because I'm like, okay, unemployment is running out, and she still hasn't gotten a job. Some random time at 3 a.m. on this day, I had this idea to just yell at God. I was like, God, if you're real, why don't you help my mom find a job? I said, God, universe, Jesus, if you're real, why don't you help me find a job for my mom? I literally said that out loud, and then I just resumed back to scrolling on my phone at 3 a.m. And then out of nowhere, knowing that we're New Age, knowing what downloads are, knowing what revelations are, not biblical revelations at that time, I would have said I received a download, which is what I would kind of say now. Like, it's not, it feels like it's my thought from my own mind, but it's not. Something told me, go to Google and search up housekeeping jobs in the hospital, right? So all this time I was looking for housekeeping, cleaning jobs, or whatever in Indeed, and I wasn't really looking for, or I would search up housekeeping jobs on Google, but it was a specific way, the way that download told me to say it at the time, right? Or the way God told me to say it, to write it on Google. And so I was like hesitant. I was like, am I just desperate and just wanting to search up this thing again? Or is this actually like a download from God and I'm just like crazy right now? So I was going back and forth. I'm like, did God tell me to do that? Is this a feeling of desperation? Is it a nudge? Is it a download? What is this? So I just didn't take that risk. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't even matter if it is or if it isn't. I might as well do it because I have nothing to lose. So I opened my laptop at 3 a.m. I found this job nearby that said, actually it doesn't even say nearby, I didn't even say the location, it just said cleaning jobs, and that was like one of the first things that popped up in Google, and I feel like it was actually just a brand new job that was opened. And so I applied there. After that day, a lady from the church, she called my mom's house phone. And guys, nobody uses a house phone. This random lady from church, we don't know her because we haven't gone to church in like over a decade. There's no way that you could have our house phone number and you're somebody from church. And she told my mom, hey, don't worry, like God told me to tell you this, that you don't have to worry anymore, like everything is going to work out, everything is going to be okay. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, like you don't know how much I needed to hear that, la da da. And so what bothered me the most during that time was, why would a lady from church call us if we in New Age believe that God isn't in the church, right? That we believe God is in every, like existence, like in nature or in the signs, angel numbers or astrology. Like we didn't believe, at least I didn't believe that God the God would be found in the church. I think he would be found in nature, right? Or in sound frequencies or in meditation. Yet this lady is calling my mom from church and telling her this. And so that was something that stuck with me, because I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And literally the day after that call, my mom got the interview. So I prepped her for the interview. My mom's name is Anna, by the way. So this is also important. She ends up going to the interview. She gets the job, right? She doesn't know English, but she was able to like speak a little bit to the point where she got the interviewer. She got impressed. And she's like, oh, you understand something, so I could basically hire you. And so she ends up getting hired. And the lady who helps my mom a lot, her name is Anna, and my mom's name is Ana Perez, and that lady's name is Ana Polo. So AP is just such a crazy synchronicity, right? The job location is literally 3 stops away from where I live. The amount of money that my mom is making is so much more than she's ever made in her entire life, and she has so much free time. She's so excited, so happy to fill it up with anything of her choosing, right? She ends up getting paid. This is the thing that just blows my mind the most, is because when I asked God to find a job for my mom, I asked him for all the things that my mom said, which was she wanted more free time, to get paid enough, and to not do so much. This was very important to me because my mom is getting older and I don't want her to do so much. I feel like I've watched her struggle all my life for doing so much, and she never had enough. And so it was so important for me that she find a job in where she doesn't have to do so much and feel like it just basically takes away her life. Because a 9 to 5 is like, okay, the day's already done when you get out. And so she ends up going to work at 5 in the morning. She cleans, and she would be done at like 10 o'clock. That is crazy. And she would literally sit there for the rest of the day until 2 p.m. and she would get paid to do nothing. She would get paid to do light work. She would get paid even at some point they would have like some snowstorms and stuff, and she was invited to just sleep over there, and she got paid the whole 10-12 hours, and she's doing nothing, guys. So I mean she's doing something obviously, but nothing is hard and compared to all the things that she has been doing in her life, working on factories, standing, in the freezing cold, like for the barest minimum. Like, it's a huge thing, and I'm so beyond grateful. And I feel like this also ties into a lot of the things that I would be so confused about growing up, which is why God doesn't answer prayers, right? Like, why God doesn't answer prayers immediately. And I could see now, like, part of my mom just being in those circumstances and where she did not like the job, and we always had enough to go by, but it was never just like it to a point where she felt like she was secured financially, right? It was always a struggle. And I can see now that if God had answered her prayer immediately, this wouldn't be part of my testimony. Had he answered my mom's prayer 10-12 years ago, this wouldn't be part of the biggest reason why I started to question New Age spirituality. And if the God in New Age is the God, right? Is Jesus. Because why would you find him in the church if we're all thinking the opposite, right? We're all thinking that Christianity and Catholicism is just like it's sexist and all these things, right? Like we have all of these opinions around it. And so this became part of the biggest thing, the realization, like, what's most important is your salvation. And God never said that you were gonna live in this world like pain free. Like, that is part of life, and he's not going to deny the truth of this reality. And yet he will still use your struggles and redeem it and use it for his glory, and use it to save other people, use it to give people hope. Because the little bit of hope that you're clinging on to in New Age could very much lead you away from truth the truth, love, peace, and bliss and support that Jesus provides, so much to the point that people will sacrifice their old ways, their old identity for him. You have to love so much in order for you to do that. You have to literally surrender, and surrender becomes part of the byproduct of that love. So think about how deeply intimate those people must know Jesus, that it leads them naturally to surrendering their old ways. And so that's also something to think about, right? But yeah, so that is actually a huge major part in why I understand now how God works outside of our timeline. He works for the benefit of the entire humanity, right? Like, we'll never truly understand how God operates and how he answers prayers and how all these things, that they all just part of God's mission for us. They're helping everyone get saved at the end of the day. And it's very, very important that you seek him, that you learn how to hear him, so that you will never be astray. You will never be led astray. You will never be, falling in another, toxic pattern. Actually, let me backtrack. You won't fall into, another thing like New Age and another thing that leads you further away from God because of lack of knowledge, right? But you will always be met with grace, even though this is naturally part of what humans do, right? Like, we forget, we end up falling back into old habits, old patterns, and God is telling you, come to me consistently, because the more that you do, I will change your heart. And the more that you do that, your heart, your emotion, which is honestly what leads us to a lot of our behaviors, neuroscience supports, psychology, self-development supports, is what needs to be transformed first in order for us to have long-lasting identity shifts and mindset shifts and long-lasting change that actually sticks, that isn't just, instant, right? It's something that's practiced, something that's repeated, something that's consistent, something that can anchor into your identity. I think this is all I really have for my testimony. I've tried my best to make it more compact and shorter, but thank you so much for watching, and I pray for anyone who is in New Age to at least, confront these spirit guides and ask them to show their real colors and true colors in the name of Jesus, so you can seek Jesus. Don't just listen to people, but seek him and find out for yourself, like, who he is truly. God bless you guys, and I will see you guys next time.